This episode of Troxel is supported by ArcVision. Save 5% off anything and everything, including any type of license of the just released Rhino version 8 when you buy from arcvision.com/store and use code TRXL at checkout. That's ARCHVISION.com/store and use code TRXL at checkout and save 5% off your entire order. Just make sure you do it before December 31st, 2023. This episode of Troxel is supported by Avail. Avail helps AECO firms better manage, organize, and navigate information faster. Visit getavail.com today. This episode of Troxel is supported by Confluence, which is now more than a conference. It's also a video podcast where AEC industry software developers take us behind the scenes and share their design and decision-making process to show how they made the tools we all use to design the built environment. It's available on YouTube and Spotify. Follow the link in the show notes and subscribe today. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. A little bit of housekeeping here before I introduce my guest for the episode. I'll be at Autodesk University next week, and if you're going to be there too, please reach out to me on LinkedIn and send me a message. I'd love to meet you. You can find the link to my profile in the show notes for this episode at trxl.co. Okay, in this episode, I welcome German Aparicio Jr. German is the program manager of early innovation and partner development at Trimble Ventures, where he is focused on advancing early stage innovation and collaboration, leading outreach efforts, and expanding their innovation portfolio through the identification of promising early stage companies. He has a decade of consulting experience working with Trimble Consulting, providing strategic advisory and advanced project delivery services to leading owners, architects, engineers, builders, fabricators, and other industry professionals worldwide. German previously co-founded Trimble's 060 Accelerator program focused on design and technology for Trimble's core industries to help startups build and scale innovative products and services. Prior to joining Trimble, German worked at some of the world's leading design, engineering, and technology companies, including Gary Technologies, which is also known as GT. In this episode, we discuss Trimble Ventures' new venture fund program to stimulate innovation in AEC, the importance of connecting the job site with design, mentorship and the value of real-world experience, the use of AI and machine learning in the AEC industry, and the potential of multimodal models and the natural language interfaces in the latest AI tools. So, without further ado, I bring you my conversation with German Aparicio. German, welcome to the podcast. Great to see you again.
Thank you. Likewise, Evan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're gonna take two here because we just had a recording hiccup. So we've already chatted through this, but I wanted you to maybe tell a little bit of the story of where we met and what we were doing back in the day, as we called this segment of the show.
Yeah, so I was mentioning, I was thinking about this. I'm thinking about coming on the podcast, and I think the first time we met was back in my Cal Poly days when I was a student there. So early 2000s, and I was mentioning that I took one of your courses, and it was focused on FormZ, which was the 3D modeling software at the time. It was kind of the cutting edge technology, and I was very excited to take this course because I was kind of frustrated with the existing tool sets that we had, and yeah, I was looking forward to learning more.
FormZ circa 2003. It was 3D modeling was a different animal back then, right? Like we were working in wireframe all the time, and It was big desktop bound computers. We had the Mac lab, we had the PC lab at Cal Poly, and I remember that very well also. And that was really before we started teaching BIM at Cal Poly, right? It wasn't too long after that I recall teaching ArchiCAD. And then we transitioned to Revit. And I know for me, always teaching kind of technology on the technology side of the architecture program, I was just constantly having to adjust my curriculum. I was just telling somebody this story just a few days ago. Like every quarter, technology is moving. Whereas the professors in design studio, which of course get all of the attention from all the students, it's what everything it's all built on design studio. Those courses never change, right? They're probably still doing the getaway house in third year. They're probably still doing the infill project in second year. They're probably, and it's really interesting to me because I always felt like I had to meet the demands of what the studio professors wanted technology wise for a whole decade, and their courses never changed. I just kind of reflecting on that, and it's interesting to see how technology is affecting the profession, but it's amazing how much of the profession is also got its heels dug in and it's not going to change, technology or not otherwise. It's really kind of an interesting paradigm, and this whole foundation of what we do as professionals. It's just kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think our industry has always been slow to adopt new technologies, right? So it's kind of interesting to think about, what technologies existed when I was a student there at Cal Poly. And like I mentioned, Form Z was kind of cutting edge. And I think back then it was, every, I don't know, 2.5 to 5 years that a new technology came to market, and kind of a new skill set that we had to learn. Yeah, today that time has gone down, right? You mentioned the quarter, universities on the quarter system, but I think even shorter time frame now, right? We're seeing new developments like, I don't know, 6 months is kind of a long time frame. Now it's like every 3 months or every other month you hear something new.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And with all of the the AI hype cycle that we're living through at the moment, right, is every week there's now it's multimodal AI, and that's going to be forgotten in a minute, and we're going to move on to something else. But it just feels like it's moving so quickly. It's absolutely astounding, the pace. And I'm sure that you're hyper aware of what's going on in the space. So maybe you can, before we get into the tech of today and what is really interesting to you, let's go back and give the story of what you've been up to for, let's just say, the last decade, maybe more. But since we, we're 20 years out of Cal Poly at this point.
Yeah.
You were in my paths crossing, right? And a lot has happened. Too much to talk about, but talk about your role at Trimble and where you're coming from on the incubator accelerator side. I want you to kind of paint the picture of what you've been working on since you've been at Trimble.
Yeah, so I joined Trimble by way of acquisition back in 2014 when I was working at Gary Technologies, and I joined Gary Technologies by way of an invitation by then my formal thesis advisor from MIT, Dennis Sheldon, invited me to join the team after we had taught a course together at UCLA. And so I was kind of excited to leave the corporate world and join a boutique firm focused on, advanced project delivery using cutting edge technologies. And the idea of, working on some of these amazing projects that Gary Technologies had the fortune of by way of working with Frank Gehry and other architects. Little did I know that the company was going to be acquired by Trimble. But to Trimble's credit, since 2014, they've kind of left the consulting group as is for many years, and had the fortune to work on a number of very exciting projects as part of that team. Worked on projects like the new airport in Mexico City. I had a chance to work on a number of WDI projects over at Disney across the world, in Tokyo and Florida. Had a chance to work on a number of projects around the world that are well documented online. But during that period, having worked in consulting and developing bespoke technologies for every project, and then at the end of a project kind of throwing it away, quickly realized that it was a very sustainable model. And how do you drive real change in the industry if you're not able to kind of develop these products in further detail, right, ready for market. We decided to kind of launch a accelerator program, and so in 2018, co-founded an accelerator program called 060, and worked with a number of startup companies, many whose founders you've had on your podcast, right, including teams like or companies like Hypar, TestFit, Tonic DM, all really, really great products and teams that are contributing to driving that change in the industry. And was kind of very excited to launch the accelerator program and play a role in helping drive that change. And so from that success, based on those early partnerships with these companies, more recently, I've had the opportunity to join our ventures team. And so the idea behind the ventures team is to create a role under the ventures umbrella to help grow and scale this accelerator program, and also focus on our portfolio companies. So for those that don't know, Trimble Ventures is a corporate venture arm of Trimble, and they manage a $200 million fund, which is, you can think of fund number one that invest in companies, startup companies, more closer to Series A through D. And the idea behind my role is maybe to focus more on the early stage companies, right? So pre-Series A, I think pre-seed and seed stage companies, to help develop their ideas and develop partnerships over time. So I'm excited to announce that currently left the Trimble Consulting team and joined the Trimble Ventures team to focus on this new role.
There's a lot of little pieces I want to go back and pick out. Yes, we have had several. We've had your past colleagues on the show. You guys lectured in my class at Cal Poly. So this is other kind of touch points along our paths that we've had. And talking about emerging technology, you've always had this drive toward technology and making the profession better. And I think it's interesting now, you were with the 060 Accelerator, you mentioned Hypar, TestFit, Reg at Tonic DM was on the show. I'll put links to all of these back in the show notes for this episode so people can kind of connect the dots. Robert Ewan from Monograph as well, right? Yeah. And there's this really interesting take by Trimble, which is like, you don't just go out and acquire these companies. Maybe you try, I have no idea, right? But this idea of investing, I think, is so interesting because it's different than what we see other large companies in AEC trying to do, right? And so can you just talk about it from that point of view here? Just why that approach? Why the investment approach? Why the mentoring approach? Because I think we want to talk about mentoring as well. Why are you not just investing dollars, but you're also like the idea of an accelerator program is not just money, right? It's expertise, it's lessons learned, it's all of these things. So from your perspective, can you kind of bounce off of those kind of ideas and tell us where you guys are coming from?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I think there's many investment vehicles, right, that you mentioned. So there are efforts, right? There's the M&A, the mergers and acquisitions. I think Trimble, as a company, has done a great job by acquiring various companies like Dairy Technologies. That's how I was introduced to Trimble, and really leaves them, for a long time to do what they're best at, and brings them under the Trimble umbrella as what we call One Trimble. The other area where Trimble invests in is in, as part of the ventures arm, right, is in these startup companies, Series A through D. So there's a whole fund kind of focus on to that, as well as historically in some of our partner funds like Iron Springs, investing kind of in some of those companies. The one that I can speak closer to because I'm part of this probably from an acceleration standpoint, right? The focus on the earlier stage companies. And the idea behind that was to partner with some of these existing companies that maybe were pre-revenue or had under $1 million in revenue, and some of these companies had different needs, and it kind of goes back to the motive for starting the accelerator in the first place, right? Is to partner with these companies, help drive change in the industry, but as well realizing that if you look to adjacent industries like the tech industry, there's very mature accelerator programs that offer, to your point, mentoring and finance and access to resources to these companies to grow and scale. I felt like in 2018, when we launched this accelerator program, we didn't have that for architecture, engineering, construction specifically. If we did, it was maybe, one of the existing tech programs or a very small program. And I thought Trimble was uniquely positioned to set up an accelerator program and have a lot of value to offer to these companies. So as part of the accelerator program, we kind of structured it similar to other accelerator programs in the tech industry, where we have series of demo days, mentor days, and then we end with a graduation event. So it's currently set up as a 3-month equity-free program. But the meat of that program is really focused on workshops, training, and mentorship. And so the workshops really help companies who need help in specific areas, right? Such as marketing or finding that product market fit, or just getting introduced to strategic clients. So Trimble is uniquely positioned that it works with a number of innovative, customers, right? Clients that we have as customers that are doing really amazing work. And, we had the opportunity as part of this accelerator program to have, dedicated, we call them open closed demo days, where we would invite a number of our participants to come present to strategic clients and get that kind of early feedback, which is, I think, was a big value add. But in addition to that, industry specific training. So we would offer, as part of this program, access to hardware and software, and then kind of any needed training associated to that. Back then, we had a few APIs, but maybe not a central location where developers could find that information. And so part of the accelerator program experience was to facilitate those connections and access to documentation for potential integration to the products. But that wasn't necessarily the focus. The real focus was on mentoring, right, these companies and providing a help where they needed access to resources, whether it be introduction to potential clients, marketing opportunities by inviting them to specific events, or networking with industry professionals, and internally with folks that have built and created their own companies in the past and found themselves to be acquired by Trimble, or this was kind of the next evolution of their careers, that come back and provide that feedback to these participants.
Are you planning on getting software before the year ends? Maybe you need to use your budget in 2023 or want to upgrade to something new, like the just released Rhino version 8. Rhino 8 introduces amazing new tools for architectural design. One standout feature is the push-pull tools, which are incredibly powerful and even work on curved surfaces. The new inset command and auto C-plane tools enhance the architectural modeling experience. There are also new features like auto-updating clipping section drawings, shrink wrap, which is amazing for 3D printing, and new display types, including a fast and beautiful built-in render engine. Rhino also now supports new Grasshopper data types, and bonus, upgrades from any older version of Rhino are currently 33% off for a limited time. By purchasing anything at arcvision.com/store and using the code TRXL at checkout, you can not only support Troxel, but you'll also get 5% off your order. ArcVision is an authorized reseller of Rhino, SketchUp, Enscape, V-Ray, and more. So whether you're a student, an individual practitioner, or part of a firm with multiple licenses, if you're looking to buy architectural software before the end of 2023, Visit arcvision.com/store and use code TRXL at checkout and save 5% off your order. The link will also be in the show notes. I think I caught you saying equity free. It's not like I caught you red-handed or something, but is that what you said? Is it you said that this was like an equity free investment?
Correct. The program was initially set up to be an equity free program, right? And the idea behind that was, like I said, in our industry, we didn't really have a program, accelerator program set up to help these companies build. A lot of these companies are bootstrapped. They might have one or two customers, or they might have their own investment that they're using, maybe family, friends' money to get them up and running. And so felt like being part of a large organization didn't make sense to take equity in these companies. And that really wasn't the goal, right? The goal was to help them grow and scale in the various ways that they were looking to do that, again, to hopefully help drive change in the industry.
I just think that is super interesting, German. Like that just sounds completely amazing. And as the VC kind of landscape has changed, I think everybody's way more aware of it than we were 10 years ago or 5-6 years ago when you guys started this, to be looking for the unicorns, right? Looking for the 10x, 100x returns. It's a difficult landscape for startups to navigate, especially if they're coming from architecture, right? Like this is not how people were trained. They're not trained in finance. They're not trained in all these, Series A, Series B, Series C. They're not trained in, and that is like a foreign language. It's a foreign concept to a lot of them, to a lot of us, I should say, because I'm coming from architecture as well, right? This is we barely even had a business class. We probably didn't have a business class in architecture, right? And so for you guys as Trimble, a big company who's been there, done that, you've acquired firms, you've invested. Everybody wants a return on their investment. And I think what's interesting from what I'm hearing from you is that the return on investment for you is a stronger profession, is a stronger industry. And I think that is wild that you're actually doing that. I mean, really? That's what you're doing? That sounds incredible to me.
Yeah, I think it comes from our own experiences, right? Like yourself, I am also trained as an architect. Went to Cal Poly Architecture School, didn't have the opportunity to take business courses. It wasn't really until grad school that I was kind of exposed to this idea of startups, right? And kind of spinning out companies out of labs, right? And kind of what resources it would take to do that, to achieve that. And I had the fortune to spend some time at MIT where I learned a little bit of that, but also it wasn't until I had the opportunity to teach in the Bay Area and spend time in San Francisco teaching at CCA and at UC Berkeley, where I was kind of exposed to the idea of an accelerator program. I served as a mentor to some of the companies there and just learned kind of some of the behind the scenes, right, of that world. And so that also kind of inspired, right, me to help start this accelerator program. And then also taking the experience from being acquired, right, as Gear Technologies into Trimble, and the idea that, a company which in its own was a startup out of Frank Gehry's practice, right, as this kind of a sister company to realize his buildings that could develop a technology back then, such as G Team, that came out of, working on projects, now Trimble Connect, and be acquired by a large organization like Trimble. I thought was really interesting. And so kind of going back to why make it equity free, a program like that didn't exist for our industry. And so one, it didn't make sense to take equity in these smaller companies who are just, trying to build a product or a service and have that background. But I thought, again, Trimble was uniquely positioned to offer that knowledge, that skill set, access to resources, mentorship to be able to take those products and services to the next level.
I just think about the mindset difference between startups that are building something for the short term to get acquired by somebody bigger versus the ones who are building something to last. That is much more of an architectural practice point of view. Building a practice, well, a lot of people start their own practices, right? And they want to build that practice for decades. They want to build it. They're not starting a practice to get acquired typically, right? It does happen. There's a lot of M&A in AEC, right? But I think most people start a practice because they want the freedom, whether that's the freedom of expression or the types of projects, or they see a niche that they can go after. And what you're talking about is investing in companies to help them build something that lasts. And of course, I can't imagine that you're putting some kind of clause in there that says you can't get acquired, right? Of course, some people are still going to, do that. But I think that that's just kind of an interesting perspective to take, to do something for the industry. I mean, funny enough, that's why I do what I'm doing at the podcast, right? I want to see this industry get better. I want to share the things that typically happen in private conversations with everybody so that we can all get better together. And it sounds a lot to me like that's what you're doing with Trimble. And I like how you take it back to what you were doing at GT when you were acquired. And I remember when you and Lucas and Allie were all working at GT, I thought of you guys as like a Skunk Works team or like a SWAT team who would go into different projects for different architects all over the world and like do a job, right? You were the A team. And then you would go back out and then you would go do another job. And I think it's interesting that you said that you would kind of start from scratch every time. And you saw that as being really wasteful. And we kind of do that on architectural projects as architects throughout the entire industry. And it's amazing to me to even think about your first cohort that you had at 060 with Ian from Hypar. And one thing we've talked about on this podcast is how his goal was to make it so that architects never had to start from a blank page, which is exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about what you were doing at GT even, right? So all of these things are kind of swirling around and informing each other and creating this kind of clear path forward. And I think it's just incredible that Trimble kind of sees this as a zero equity. Of course, I'm sure there's an option at some point where it would, like, you couldn't not try to acquire a firm if they were interested in that, to be part of the bigger Trimble ecosystem. But for the most part, you're just saying, no, like, we're doing this to strengthen all of it. And because you working at GT, you saw the incredible power of what technology could do. You mentioned the Mexico City airport. I mean, you guys came into my class and talked about that project. Allie did. She talked about that project and she talked about what you did there, and that these projects could not happen without what you were doing. I mean, it's absolutely just table stakes that they could not have happened without what you're doing. And I think you're applying that view back to the industry and saying, well, that's what technology has the power to do. We've seen it firsthand. We're going to empower others to do that more and more and more for our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely informed from our previous experiences. Like I said, my time at Cal Poly, my time at MIT, and my time at GT kind of informed the motivation behind launching the accelerator program. But also from those experiences, realizing, not having been trained in these areas and just learning from having spent time in the industry and working with others. So that, the early parts of the accelerator program were really exciting because we were also learning from the startup companies about how to run an accelerator program. What is the best way to structure it, what value we could provide to these companies. And it was in the form of access to resources, whether it be again, technology, hardware, software, or marketing opportunities, introductions to customers, those sorts of things. But I think that the biggest value that we had to offer, or that came out of maybe a lesson learned that came out of that experience, was this idea of mentorship. That's also been kind of a theme throughout my career in education, right? Kind of going back to the beginning of the podcast, we're talking about time at Cal Poly. People like yourself like to, thank you for that time and learning about various software technologies that you brought to the university. You know, other professors at Cal Poly that served as mentors for me, people like Axel Pritchard Smith-Springer, Michael Fox, Jun Tao, a number of other faculty there that helped inspire and kind of drive my career. I think very similar idea is what we're trying to push as part of the accelerator program, the idea of mentorship, and how, because a number of people who decide to start their own companies, right, don't have that background, how do you bring them up and running or up to speed in a short amount of time? And that's kind of the idea behind having this 3-month window, 3-month window to be able to bring your product and service and scale it up through this program and connect you with various mentors, whether it be in marketing, whether it be in software development, or other areas that you have a need. And so, as kind of a result, this year we decided to run a pilot program with our Trimble Tech Labs, and our Trimble Tech Labs is a program with our university partners. And so we launched that this last August, and we currently have a number of students that participate. So the idea was to target undergrad, graduate, and maybe even faculty who have maybe researching ideas as part of the labs, and how do we leverage the resources they have available to them as part of the labs to develop their own business model and value propositions. So in parallel, I've also been teaching a course at Cal Poly Pomona as a part-time faculty there. Shout out to George and other faculty for allowing me to teach this course. But it teaches students about the business model. We use the business model canvas as a tool, right? Or lean methods, the same business principles that are taught in like a NSF I-Corps type program to help develop your own business models and value propositions. And we do that through a series of exercises and doing customer surveys. Currently running that curriculum as part of this pilot program that we have with our Trimble Tech Lab partners. And so we have a cohort of students from various universities, including Washington State University, Purdue, Texas A&M, Florida International University. They've been a great partner in developing this pilot program to see if we can't help the various participants develop their own business models and potentially spin-offs out of these labs. I think that's another exciting space that kind of builds on top of the ideas that were mentioned before.
This episode is made possible with support from Avail. What's one of the most painful aspects of working in Revit today? Well, we all know that as a Revit project grows over time, navigating the information in that project becomes ever more taxing. And when more than one person is working on a project, a new wave of challenges arise. It only gets more difficult throughout the life of a project. Good news, a huge update to Avail Desktop was just released. Version 4.5 introduces several powerful new features designed to improve organizing, searching, and finding information within Avail. New features include channel groups, application mappings, and scope searches. But that's not all. Let's talk about the all-new Project Navigator, a powerful new feature in Avail for Revit 5.1 that extends Revit's native project browser to help navigate the dense information you're forced to endure as your projects grow. For the first time, Avail will connect your active project to your standard library with one unified search box. With Project Navigator, you can easily switch between active projects, see recently viewed Revit elements, search across all Revit project elements, yes, all of them, conveniently search Avail with one click, filter by all the different element types, navigate to sheets and views, legends and schedules, view individual elements contained on sheets and navigate to them, view family types, and more importantly, actually drag and drop them right into your project, view instances of each family type currently being used in the model, and more. To read all about the new features and see a video of them in action, visit getavail.com. There you'll find a features pull-down menu, and you can look at all of the different features, including the new Project Navigator. Once again, that's getavail.com, and look in the bar across the top for that features pull-down menu. Thank you to Avail for supporting this episode of Troxel.
The idea of teaching basically entrepreneurship in architecture, I think, has been lacking for a long time. It's awesome to hear that that's what's going on. I had a conversation with a previous guest, Jeff Eccles, who teaches a pro practice class at Ball State University in Indiana. And a big piece of that is entrepreneurship as well, and kind of designing business models that typically it's going to be around technology. The students are immersed in technology. It's how they deliver all their projects. And so oftentimes I think they can see opportunities there or holes, right, that they might want to try to fill with an idea. It's really cool to hear that there's an avenue to develop those skills, because I think, going to school, when I went to school, it was like you're getting trained to go work in an office. And it wasn't really that you're getting trained to go run a business or start a business, right? You would learn how to do that by working at some other office, right? Schools did school stuff, businesses did business stuff, and they were kind of separate. They still kind of are, right? So it's really interesting to me to hear that this is actively being pursued with these university partnerships all over the United States. Can you give some ideas of just the kinds of ideas that students come up with? Because we look at design courses, the ideas are wild, right? They're all over the place, and that's encouraged. Like, that's what you do when you're in school. Is it the same for this kind of a course, or is there like limits that you put on students? Or I'm really interested to kind of hear the kinds of things that you're experiencing through this process.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my consulting days, right? Having spent a number of years on projects and identifying specific pain points, areas where technologies didn't speak to each other, how to develop bespoke technologies to solve a specific problem, or I think that kind of fed into this concept that students face similar aha moments, right, when doing their own research, that there are pain points in the industry in which that they realize technologies don't talk to each other, and they're working on an idea that could help solve those challenges. So the idea behind this pilot program was to work with those students that were researching those type of things in the labs and develop their own business models and value propositions. And so we have essentially 4 teams at the moment that are participating in part of this pilot program from those various universities I previously mentioned. And some of them are focused on taking maybe construction safety training as an idea, creating kind of certificate program. But what would a safety training certificate program look like using emerging technology like virtual reality or augmented reality headset, right? How do you take, and I think this idea is interesting because I think it came about as a result from the COVID era, right? So like a lot of students and just people in general found themselves that they couldn't do their jobs because they couldn't access labs or the facilities to achieve their specific goals. And so this idea that you could kind of extend the lab into a headset and train a labor force at scale using these emerging technologies is really interesting. So this team is looking at developing a construction safety course using virtual reality. And as part of this program, they're looking to develop that on top of a product that we have at Trimble called Trimble Virtual World. And it's kind of this really neat virtual environment that allows you to build what's called a quest, right? And the idea behind Trimble Virtual World is to create these kind of training experiences to help train various labor forces, because that's currently a challenge, specifically in the construction industry, right? Is to find enough people to build projects, right, and train them up. I think there's also a big disconnect between those that have the knowledge in the industry, right? They're maybe more senior individuals versus the incoming kind of workforce right out of school. And so the idea behind this platform is to help kind of build a connection between those two groups and have kind of a virtual environment to do that type of training. So this team is looking to take their construction safety course and implement it on our Trimble Virtual World platform, which is a very exciting project that they're currently working on. We're currently about halfway through the accelerator program, just had a very successful mentor day, and getting ready for a demo day here at the end of October, and then a graduation event in end of November. But that's just one team. Another team that's out of the Sweden area is developing a wood, sorry, let me say this correctly. Yeah, a wood structural system, a building system that allows you to assemble and disassemble buildings on demand. And so this particular student has developed a product and is looking to patent that product. And with part of the accelerator program, looking to take that building system and essentially take the logic and encode it into one of our products that's called Trimble Creator, which is essentially, very similar to, I would say, like a Grasshopper Dynamo for SketchUp or Tekla, for example, to be able to build a building configurator, right? So you think about taking her library of parts, whether it be a floor system, wall system, roof system, encoded into this software that allows a designer to build a design and then kind of automate the instructions for assembly and disassembly of that project. That's the second project that currently working on. The third one is focused on cost estimating tool. So we have a student out of Florida International University that is kind of looking at this old age problem of cost estimating and using models for quantification. And so we're taking his research work and building it into a product of ours called Trimble Connects, so that you're able to automatically upload a model and kind of extract those values in the back end, and potentially use something like AI to give you cost estimating values. So that's our third project, and maybe the fourth project is focused on indoor mapping. They've partnered. This is out of Texas A&M. They partner with another startup company that's developed indoor positioning system that is a technology that's come out of NASA, and they're looking to collaborate to build a new product to help visualize that information to help first responders. And so they're taking the data that's collected from that system and maybe create models on Trimble Connect, SketchUp, then kind of visualize in real time some of that sensor data using these technologies. So a lot of really, a lot of our labs are based out of the civil engineering departments, and so kind of a lot of projects, in these various spaces, from everything from training to building configuration to indoor mapping and cost estimating. Just to give you a flavor of the projects that come through the program.
And some of these things, maybe all of them, are not things that are a traditional focus of architecture school, right? These are not design problems. And so you said civil engineering departments, a lot of that's where this action is happening. But like the kind of, well, there's two things I want to talk about here. One is like approaching this as a design problem, right? We as architects are trained to focus on design problems as design problems, but we don't necessarily think about our businesses as design problems, and we don't think about our practices as design problems. And I think that there's a lot of room for that. The other thing though that I think is interesting that you're in a position to deliver here, and I'm interested to see if you are, is students don't have all the experience needed to do cost estimating. They don't have all the experience needed to do the kinds of when you're talking about a building system for deployable buildings that can get assembled and disassembled. And so because Trimble is such a big entity, are you able to connect those students? I mean, we talked about mentoring, so I kind of assume the answer is yes, but are you connecting them with people in the industry, whether that's Trimble or outside of Trimble, to make informed decisions as they develop these ideas so that they can go farther faster, right? Because I think something we all, I don't want to say suffered from, but the thing that we saw when we were in school was that a lot of our professors didn't practice architecture. They were career academics, right? And that was a bit of a disservice for knowing what it was going to be like to work in the industry. And a lot of times you go through school, then you get out of school, and it's like, you didn't learn that how we do that, because we just didn't have that connection. So are you making those connections for these projects, these people who are leading these projects in universities, so that they get that exposure and that experience as they do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right. That's kind of the goal behind this pilot program as part of this accelerator, is to take, like I said, the research that's coming out of the labs and help develop them to business ideas. And various participants are at different stages in that, right? In being able to achieve a product or service, or actually a business model value proposition as a product and service that they can go in and sell or turn into a business, right? And kind of put in front of a customer. So as part of the accelerator program, we try to pair them with mentors, either internally with leaders in our organization who have started their own companies and can provide that type of mentorship, or technical expertise, right? Matching them with a lot of our development team or business units that focus on similar products that they can build on top of, right? Introducing them to other programs that we have in existence. For example, we have a Trimble developer program that is being created that allows these participants to access APIs or SDKs. For example, we have a Trimble partnership program that we introduce them to. In addition to that, other learning resources, we have a platform called learn.trimble.com where they're able to access various learning products. Think of LinkedIn Learning or these other platforms where you get kind of subscribe to a course and right. But this gives you access to specific Trimble software learning curriculums. We also have other resources that we make available to them, so that hopefully they can leverage that, and not just internally, but also try to make the connections externally. Right, a number of our folks, partner with the external organizations, and I mentioned strategic customers. So when the time is right, we try to introduce them to some of these customers to get that kind of feedback. Or in the case of the student that's working on the project for, let's say, the building system, introduce them to specific trade organizations and leaders in trade organizations to see what kind of opportunities might exist there, or feedback they could provide for their project. So I think that's my biggest challenge. And if I had a call to action, right, for this podcast, would be to, if you're interested in mentoring, please feel free to reach out and join, right, the accelerator as part of the mentor, because there's a number of people who could use your expertise, whether it be industry expertise, subject matter expertise, or if you started your company, right, entrepreneurship expertise. These are all kind of things that we could use more of. And I think, I listened to a recent podcast you did with Clifton, and his call to action was to have more startup companies,
Right.
more investment opportunities, more spin-outs out of tech companies. But to get there, I think we need to have greater mentorship, and that's my goal as part of this accelerator program, is to provide that for industry and for graduates coming out of the university that who are interested in starting their own companies.
This episode is made possible with support from Confluence. If you've been listening to the Troxel podcast, you've heard of our next sponsor for this episode, Confluence. But we have something new to announce. Confluence is now more than invite-only live events. It's now also a podcast. And it's very cool, if I do say so myself, because it's a joint collaboration between me here at Troxel and Randall Stevens of Avail, who is the creator of Confluence, as well as having been on this podcast a couple of times talking about the AEC tech industry that we all love. So who's the show for? Well, have you ever written software? Or wondered why the software you use works the way it does? Or want to find out how the people who make the software in our industry do their work? Then this is the show for you. I like to describe the Confluence podcast as the director's commentary track for AEC industry software, because in each episode, we go behind the scenes of AEC software development and talk directly with the developer to dissect a feature and their workflows and get an inside view of how and why they made the decisions they did while creating the software you use. Randall describes it as the AEC industry software version of the How I Built This podcast, which we are both huge fans of. Confluence is a visual show in which our guests show their work. We think you're really going to like it, and we already have a few episodes out for you to watch. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify right now. Just search for Confluence Podcast on those platforms, or click the direct links I've put in the show notes for this episode. Go check it out, and please subscribe. No, really, just go check it out and subscribe right now. This episode will still be here when you get back. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the Troxel Podcast.
I would assume that also while you're creating those connections, that the students, through the kind of interview process with those experts, not only are they getting the insight that's domain expertise, but they're also identifying what I would hope is a whole that the person who's been doing it for a long time also recognizes, and they're able to kind of tailor what they're doing toward an actual potential customer in that way. How many startups, how many ideas have you seen where there's this idea, but there's no validation of the idea? Yeah. And they may even go through the entire process of building that thing, spending all the capital and the time to do it, and then not finding a customer with it, right? It happens all the time. And so is that validation also happening through this process so that we create the connection from here to there before it's too late, before they spend all that time for nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the idea behind having demo days, mentor days, right? When it's graduation, was to get those feedback, but specifically the demo days to get the feedback from potential customers, right, on developing their products and getting that product market fit. And so customer surveys is a big component of that. And I love accelerator programs that will take, for example, participants, their applications like day one, and have participants burn those applications, and to realize that what they thought they were going to bring to market might completely change by the end of the accelerator program based on that feedback and lessons learned. And I think that's a really good kind of first lesson, is that it's important to be open and iterate and take that feedback, right, to be able to achieve that product market fit that hopefully will become a product and service that people will find value in, right? And that's not something you're going to get from me. You're not going to get from the accelerator program. It's up to the market to determine, what that looks like, what it is, and hopefully through the process that we try to create as part of the accelerator program is how participants get there.
it just makes me think of a few other things that other guests that I've had on the show, and on other podcasts that I've been on as well. One that I think of was a researcher, and she does qualitative research with building product manufacturers for the most part, and she listens to what they're saying and then does market research to see if it actually is playing out. Because I think the idea of assumptions, untested assumptions, is something that in what it doesn't make sense to me, because we're trained to test and iterate and do all of these. That's why we have critiques in architecture school, right? For the feedback loop to be in full effect. But there's so many times in technology, in product development, where there's a core set of assumptions made early that are never really tested against the market. And it's only through that testing that you get the feedback whether there's product market fit or not, right? There's kind of this initial idea where we assume that of course there is. Like, I see the value in this. Why everybody's going to see the value in this? But it's actually only through testing of those assumptions that it happens. And I think about my research friend, because there's so many times where it's like the dots aren't connecting. The message isn't landing. People are seeing things in a very different way than you think they're seeing them. And yet, as architects, we are trained on every project to do exactly what you're talking about doing. We don't think about this as the same kind of a problem as that, though, maybe. So I think that's just kind of an interesting, again, position that you're in to help people test those assumptions with these product demo days, with talking to people in various domains that could connect into what they're proposing. And so I think that's all excellent to hear.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from my time in consulting, right? I think why organizations like Carry Technologies are so successful, because they were boots on the ground. The business model was to work at a client office and live the same pain points that our customers did day in, day out. And unless you were boots on the ground and on an existing project, you wouldn't have an understanding, right, of how things are done, kind of the various workflows, and how you could plug in various technologies to make those workflows more efficient, right? And so often that would require developing, like I mentioned, bespoke solutions. And so to your point, people who work in labs, people who work, by themselves without getting that customer feedback, I think sometimes you have to develop products and services that often fail. And hopefully through this structured program, right, we're able to provide participants with enough opportunities to get that feedback from potential customers, or industry experts, from people who have understanding of the actual challenges on projects, to be able to build that into their existing products and services.
So are there internship opportunities in this kind of a thing as well, so that people can get that experience by living through that pain or that circumstance or that process with potential people who would end up buying whatever they're coming up with?
So we don't have any internships as part of our accelerator program. Our parent company Trimble has an internship program, and that's to develop. Yeah, we have a couple programs. So we have a rotational development program where recent graduates come into the program and kind of spend some time with various business units to find kind of their passion and kind of the best fit within the organization, so they get exposure to various parts of the company, get a general knowledge. So when they find kind of their final landing spot, they have an overview of the entire organization, and then hopefully find their dream job. We have also an internship program, which I believe is a summer program. So a student is able to fulfill their university requirement and spend some time in our organization and learn some new skill sets, and that hopefully they will take it throughout their career. But as part of our accelerator program, there's no specific internship per se, but the whole experience is about kind of getting that education, being put in front of potential customers, getting the feedback. Also, I think our graduation event and mentor days are also great times where we invite industry professionals to provide feedback, right? So they get it in different aspects, not necessarily being on an active project, but they get
Yeah.
it, from various users of these technologies and people who work on projects on day in day out.
There's a big lack of, in our industry, there's a big lack of connection to the job site. Like it's interesting to hear that there's projects all around the construction side of things. And maybe that's because it's coming more out of the civil engineering side. I don't know. But I think we've all seen how there's a disconnection between practice and even what actually gets built in the field, in the feedback loop that does or doesn't happen because of that disconnection to the drawings and the modeling and all that kind of stuff. It seems like a natural fit for these students to try to spend time, or and maybe they're not all students. I don't know what the age range is. Anybody, you could be any age and be in university, right? So it seems to me like there's an opportunity potentially there to walk a mile in their shoes, right? That as this old saying goes, so that you actually understand the problems better than you think you understand those problems, right? Because you'll have lived experience by doing it, and if you've walked a mile in their shoes, you'll be a mile away and you'll have their shoes, right? So you always have that going for you. But it does seem like a way to kind of, again, connect the dots and make it so that these projects really land because there is an understanding of the customer's pain and that the value proposition is always around that, right? It's actually solving someone's problem. Like understanding what the problems truly are for the businesses, so that then you figure out how you're going to go back and build something to solve that problem. It doesn't really necessarily work the other way around.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple good points there. The connection between the construction site and design. I think that's something that is a unique value that Trimble as an organization brings to the table. Right? It was a company founded in hardware, Charlie Trimble, and that geospatial GPS technology to the civil industry. And today's software is really focused on that connection between field and the office, and in facilitating communication between these various groups. So hopefully there's a better connection between the site and the design team through these various softwares. And so if I were speaking to a potential applicant, I would say that that's one of the values that Trimble brings and the software it brings, and the value of building on top of that ecosystem or Trimble platform would bring to their own products and services, and why they should consider joining the accelerator program and going through the process, because they would be getting access to those resources, the mentorship, and hopefully opportunity to put their products and services in front of potential customers for gaining that product market fit.
I want to go back and touch on something that you mentioned in passing, which was your Grasshopper-like product. And I bet there's a lot of people in the audience who have no idea that Trimble has something like that. Tom Kleiskens, who I think is the product manager on that, has been on this show. And maybe you could just I'd love to give Tom a shout out. He was introduced to me by Clifton Harness of TestFit. Okay. And he's an amazing guy. And so I want to give him a shout out. But maybe you can just give a quick overview of what that is, so that I'll put a link to it in the show notes so people can check it out. I don't know how much of it's out there yet or anything. So maybe you can just talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, I want to say it's a product, it's not in beta, it's just out of beta. To your point, it's led by Tom and his team out of New Zealand. It was an acquisition, I believe his company is called Materia. And it's very, very similar to Grasshopper. and Dynamo that it was initially it's a geometric engine, right? Essentially with a graphical user interface. And so I think when they originally required by Trimble, the idea was to embed it into a number of products. I think today it's a standalone product, but it's had some integrations with tools like SketchUp, the 3D warehouse. There's this idea of components that called adaptive components that you can build intelligence into objects and use parameters, right, to essentially build parametric relationships between various elements, and you can download them via 3D warehouse and embed them into your 3D models, whether it be in SketchUp or Tekla or other softwares. But essentially, a geometric engine that offers similar capability to like a Grasshopper and Dynamo.
Yeah, so it is like a visual programming graph on the screen, and you connect nodes together to build the linkage that you need to create geometry, right? That is parametric.
Yeah, it was kind of the next evolution, right? If you kind of go back to the beginning of our conversation, is the next evolution after FormZ, where we just had 3D modeling software, and then we had people like McNeil release Rhino, and on top of that we had Grasshopper, and the idea of computational design and being able to not have to code or encode logic using text-based programming language, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you could actually just use nodes and components to string logic together. But since then, we've seen kind of the evolution of that develop into products like Hypar, right? Being able to use reusable scripts that you would encode logic to, and you could just call. Now with the advent of AI, we're seeing now even the next level of that, where you could just use natural language, right, to build your scripts and the logic, and may become even easier than the existing tools we have today.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, maybe less trial and error. I think there's an upcoming guest on the show, Nick Catelier. He has a YouTube channel called BIM Pure Live, and he recently had an episode on there where they were doing exactly that. It's basically ChatGPT inside of Revit, I think was the case, because a lot of the stuff that he's doing is around the Revit product and BIM. And one of the things he said was like the code's really bad. And the guy who was on there showing it was like, yeah, but it still works, right? And I think we're going to see a lot of that, right? Which is like, because people don't have the patience to try to rework their visual scripting to get it to do what they want, on many levels, it's way easier to type something in to ChatGPT, say, write me a Python script, copy that Python script, throw it into a node, and it does the thing that, for the most part, you wanted it to do, and we just move on, right? And a lot of these visual programming scripts are throwaway anyway. They don't, back to your GT stuff, right? It's like, I'm going to use it on this project. There are very few scripts that get reused in major ways, in useful ways, right? Most of them get thrown away, just like most of the design process gets thrown away, and that's okay. I think it's going to be an interesting next few years with AI and scripting and coding and image generation and business use cases as well. So I'm actually really excited about it. I've kind of gone through my own hype cycle of AI and what it could or could do for us, both good and bad. But I'm interested, maybe from your point of view, and maybe we can wrap up here, is just, what are you excited about with the future? What's coming in AEC with technology? What you're seeing right now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah,
I'm excited for this next evolution of tools. With the advent of AI and machine learning, these are technologies that we explore as part of a course that I teach at Cal Poly Pomona called Advanced Digital Design. I think that's maybe the same course where you were teaching ArchiCAD and Revit. It's kind of evolved, to include.
That was ancient digital design at this point.
I think it's just continuation. Continuation, right, of these evolving technologies. So I'm kind of excited about the next level. To your point, the ability that these models allow, at least the large language models, to be able to write code without even having understanding for code, and kind of just using natural language to go back and forth, test things out, whether they work or don't work, and feed it the errors that you're getting, and debug, right, your scripts using this interface. I think is really exciting. What I'm really excited about maybe is that next evolution of these models, and how they might play with other models, generative design models. I'm really excited about the approach to multimodal models, and the idea of using various inputs. But I think there's limitations to just using text-based large language models, but being able to use, right, a 3D model as an input, use a large language model to describe what it is you're trying to achieve. Some of the new multimodal models that are coming out, such as GPT-4 Vision, I think is really exciting, because you could even use a sketch, right, as your input. So I can imagine a world where you're just able to write the logic or sketch out the logic by hand, and use kind of the vision capability to build out that scripting logic, and then kind of go back and forth with a co-pilot to develop that idea into a working script to automate a task. Or I think some of the more exciting things, like the Hyperc team is doing, right, is being able to encode that into a reusable script that you could just use a large language model to call upon an API and execute, right? And it kind of happens on the back end, and you just get the thing that you need to as part of your workflow. So stringing these various things together, these different models, to kind of answer your question, I'm more of a glass half full person. I'm maybe because of my biases in technology, I have a positive outlook versus others who kind of see it as more optimistic, versus the idea that we're going to have AGI one day that's going to take over the world, these black boxes. I think the future of AI is more about many AIs, right, that are really good at doing small things, AIs that use different inputs and that you could string together to achieve your final goal. And for me, why it's interesting and exciting is this idea that you could be a student who wants to start your own company, and you can leverage these technologies to create a product or a service that innovates in the industry and also disrupts, right, the current model, and you're able to kind of compete against big shops. So you could be, in the words of one of our previous participants, kind of be small and act big, right? I think that's a powerful idea, and exciting to see potentially be a reality and in the world where AI and machine learning exist.
There's a couple of things that I've seen recently that have just have been amazing, and those to me are showing the potential of these systems doing reverse engineering of things. So, for example, an image of a fully plated dinner is uploaded. To your point about the vision in GPT-4, right? It's just send up a picture of a plated dinner and say, give me the recipe for this dish. And it does. I think that's incredible, right? So the idea of reverse engineering something back down into its building block components and how to actually make that. So it's not just what's on the plate. It's like how you would go through, it's what is on the plate, what are the ingredients, and how do you put those together to make the thing on the plate? because I think that applies to what we do as architects. And I think that's the gap that we would be looking to get bridged between something that Midjourney produces and saying, okay, now how do I build a 3D model of that, right? Because it's a 2D representation. It's not a 3D representation. And the other one real quick was a government document that was heavily redacted. And it was able to basically, I'm sure, pretty closely figure out what had been redacted from it. Why? Because it knows what words are the most likely to come after the words that it can see, right? That's exactly what the large language model GPT 3.5 and 4 are doing, right? When they write text, it's a token-based system. Every word is a token or a series of tokens, and it's based on probability of the words that came before it, based on all the language it's ever been trained on. And so therefore, it's, again, reverse engineering something that we don't have all the answers, but it gives us a pretty good idea of what it actually takes to get there from where we are, which is from not knowing to knowing. And I think that shows a ton of potential, both kind of really interesting, but also a little bit scary in the government redacted document kind of a thing. But I'm also really optimistic and hopeful that we don't, as AEC, take too long to just sit back and watch what happens, but we kind of take it upon ourselves to figure out business use cases now that we can potentially solve with tools like that and start doing it, because I think that would be amazing. Before we say goodbye, I just want to reiterate your call to action, which was for people to get involved in mentorship. And so I want you to tell the audience how they can get a hold of you if they're interested in doing that and what might be involved in that. So can you tell everybody where's the best place to find you? And we'll put links to all these in the show notes so people don't have to stop driving when they're listening to this and write it down. They'll know they can click on a link in the show notes, but go ahead and give everybody that information.
Yeah, so to learn more about our accelerator program, you can find us at 060.io to reach out to me. Is that all
spelled out? The letters ZEROSISXTY.
TY, correct.
I can't even spell German.
Yes, as one word. No worries. Yeah, as one word. You can find more information about our accelerator program there. If you'd like to email us, we're at info@060.io as well. You can reach me on all social media platforms. I'm probably more active on LinkedIn these days. So feel free to reach out. And yeah, my call to action would be, if you're interested in mentoring, there's a number of recent graduates, professionals currently working in firms looking to start their own companies and could really use the help of industry professionals, of those that have built their own companies in the past. And yeah, just those that are interested in driving change in the industry for that mentorship and feedback for products and services. So I would ask, if you're interested and excited about this, to get involved, and please reach out.
I'll put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. I'll put 060.io in there and that email address. The last thing that I'll say is that, mentorship is not a one-way street. I think that mentors and mentees both get something out of it. And so to your point, German, if somebody is interested in helping guide and they're interested in the future and change advocacy in AEC, you will also get something out of it as a mentor. So it's not just a one-way thing that's going to take up your time. I think you're going to get just as much out of it as the mentees are. So this sounds like a fantastic program. I'm so happy to hear about your new role at Trimble Ventures, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Talk to you soon.
You too. Cheers.
Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to our members this week. Find out how you can become a member at trxl.co, and I'll talk to you again next week.